Well, hello, everyone. It's finally here. It's our league setup webinar. We are so excited to share with you today, for you, especially on the call, who have devoted this hour to beta the new CourtReserve League platform. I'm Ashley with CourtReserve, and we're going to have Tim take us through this today. This is going to be recorded. It is in the Zoom webinar format, so you can go back and see if there's questions. We will be developing some written information, almost like our knowledge base already. That's not quite ready yet, but why wait? We're just going to go ahead, teach you how to set up leagues today. Now, it is going to take about 24 hours for us to make sure that your facility has leagues turned on. And remember, this is going to be in beta. So we want your feedback and how it's working and maybe things we've missed. And again, that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this for you. So let's go ahead and get started. Do want to remind you that Catalyst, our first CourtReserve user conference, is coming up in just a matter of weeks. The seats are going quickly. So if you or a staff member is considering coming and spending 2 full days of training, having your one-on-one session with our trainers, I would encourage you to go ahead and get your tickets today. The first come, first serve on the slots, those are running out as well. So don't forget that is coming up in just a matter of weeks near Salt Lake City. And then Club Pickleball Mastermind is a couple days after that. If you are involved in pickleball and want to know best practices, how to market your pickleball facility, what's best practice around social media, how do you run memberships, how do you do programming, I'm telling you, you do not want to miss Mastermind either. So Tim, I think we are ready to get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. Great introduction. So I do want to, before we get started, this is going to be a little bit different than last week, but I do want to do a quick review. I think most of you, I think all of you actually was on the call last week, but I just want to do a quick recap of where we left off and what we can expect in this phase 1 of the league platform. So I just wanted to do a quick touch base on what league types will be available. So again, we're going to be starting with flex rotational leagues. These leagues will be doubles only. It will support men's leagues, women's leagues, and co-ed leagues. And then the future types that we got coming are the team-based leagues, time-based rotationals, singles and skinny singles. We're going to support the MLP format. We are going to support challenge ladders, and we are going to support our tennis clubs as well. So again, we're going to dive in. I'm going to go through, walk you through every bit of setup on what it takes to set up and stand up a flex league in just a minute. But I just wanted to do a quick recap there so that everybody on the call knows when you go to turn this on Monday, flex league will be the only type of league that you will be able to beta. So what is exactly a flex league? Flex leagues are where you allow your players to register, and they are ranked individually. So players will play with a different combination of players week to week. It is a ladder feel where players are moving up and falling down the ladder based on performance. We are going to be supporting 2 initial ranking algorithms that I'll get to in a little bit during the setup, one being a by percentage and the other being a 1 up and 1 down scenario. The reason that we went with this, it is super flexible. It's going to allow for you to really easily run leagues, your players to find it super simple, not have to worry about scheduling conflicts that the teams introduce. So we wanted to really start simple, start small, and start flexible. So that's why we decided to launch with flex leagues. And it is the most popular league format out there for pickleball. So players each week will have an option to opt in to play each game day. So players can miss weeks. It's not like a committed league. You definitely want to encourage, you definitely want to, make sure that your players, hey, the league's going to run better if you all play, but players, if something comes up, can miss weeks without penalization. And then this also allows you, again, as I mentioned, being able to play with multiple sets of players week to week. And it also is going to support 4 and 5 player courts. Based on feedback, the one thing that we may be working on over the next week to 2 weeks, you won't have it Monday, but we are going to support a 6 and 7 player court model. I know that may make some of you cringe, but we want you to have we don't want you to run in a scenario where you only get 6 players signed up or opting in, the dreaded 11, and not being able or having to tell somebody they can't play when in fact they've already paid, and that's going to maybe upset them away a little bit if you don't let them play. So I will explain a little bit more how that's going to work later on in the demo. So let's just jump right into it. So I will, well, let's just hold questions. So when I get into the demo, if Ashley and I think Kim's moderating as well, if you guys ask a question, they're going to interrupt me and I will answer your question. I'm trying to move pretty quickly, so I'm talking a little fast because got a lot to cover and I want to make sure to honor your time. So let's just jump right in. And while I'm doing that, if you have anything, Ashley, you want to ask me, now's the time to do it.
Yeah, I do. So if I start a league tonight, Tim, and I get my beta up on Monday, can I go in and enter my scores from a league that I started today, tomorrow, or Saturday on Monday?
Yes, you can actually. You'll have to do that. Obviously, it would probably be best if when you create the league, as you're going to see me do here in a minute, you just want to make sure that your first start date is actually the actual date you start. So if that's this weekend, just make sure your start date is this Saturday. And then, yeah, once you get beta, you can put your players in, rank them based on how they're going to be playing this weekend, opt them in based on who showed up. And then, yeah, enter your scores, finalize that game day, and all your standings will be updated. And then all your players can start opting in immediately for the next week. Great question. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, awesome. So we're just going to jump right into this. I'm going to walk you through the creating a league session, creating your schedule, and registering in this first bit. And then we'll get into sort of showing you how to manually set your rankings for week one and the different ranking types that you can set up. I'm going to simulate a game day. I'm going to show you what the standings look like. I'm actually going to go over to the mobile side so you can see what the players are going to see. I'm going to show you how the players enter scores and show you some other goodies along the way. So let's just get in to creating your first league. So the leagues are going to show up on the left nav. So you're going to go into settings, not going to show that. In your add-ons, there will be a league option. So on Monday, you'll see it. You just say enable. It's not going to be any charge while you're in beta mode. We will disclose later on down the road when we will start charging for leagues. But yes, when you set this up on Monday, you will not be charged anything. Once you add that add-on, you will see the leagues over here in your left nav. So to create your league, pretty intuitive. Click the create league button, and we're going to go through this process. So what we're going to do is we'll create an advanced, if I can spell correctly, advanced co-ed, let's call it 4.5. Okay. Now the sport here, we sort of made it very easy for you to know what features we have and what features that we have coming. So anything that we have coming is still going to be displayed, but it will be disabled. So you can't really mess this up because you really can't pick tennis because tennis is not available. And you can't pick any of these other formats either, such as a fixed schedule team league, squads-based league, or challenge ladder, because they don't exist. So same with the player format and for the league format. So obviously we're going to default to be rotational. We're going to set the league format to be doubles, and we're going to set the player format for this one to be co-ed. And as you guys know in the audience, this is if you want to just mingle all players, male and female, and let them all play together wherever they lie on the rankings. Okay. Now the background and text color I'm not going to change, but this is for your schedulers. So if you guys want specific leagues, and you get to set this at the league level, so this way you can have your beginner league, your intermediate league, and your advanced leagues, different colors to help your front desk staff or you see and differentiate the different leagues when you see them on the court sheet. Okay. So this is actually creating the league. So that's the first part. So if I save this, the next part I'm going to go into is creating the session. So sessions you can think of as seasons, because we want to keep all of the sessions and seasons together for historical purposes, so that when we start showing some cool stats later on when we release those, you can see from season to season how you did in this league. So my recommended or best practice approach is to name this based on the real season you're in. But if you have a different naming convention that your organization uses, then feel free to use it. But this is just what I do to help me remember which session I'm in. So I would recommend that you probably run anywhere from 6 to 8 to 10 week sessions, but again, totally up to you. Okay. Now the rating category is interesting because this is going to be where you can restrict your leagues based on your rating category, your pickleball rating category that players actually have stamped on their profile. So just like an event, if you want to restrict this advanced leagues to be 4 or 5 plus players, or players that have a 4.5 or 5.0 rating, you can do so here. You would just select the pickleball and then say, hey, I only want this to be 4 or 5 eligible players. Okay. Now, with the upcoming Duper integration, what you're going to be able to do is select Duper. We don't have it built in here yet, but you will see a min range and a max range, and you'll just fill in those values. So what that will do will allow and restrict, it will allow you to restrict the actual league session to a particular group of players that fit within that Duper range. Okay. So for now, for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to leave that blank. We also have the normal event restrictions that we have on events around age and gender. So I'm not going to do this by age, but if you wanted to run a junior league or just a, a 50 plus league, then you could do that and restrict it by age as you would an event. Price type. So this is something I really wanted to just touch on. This is how you price your league. So we have two options. One, and the most preferred option is probably going to be on league registration. So if I click on league registration, I'm going to set a price, and this structure is really along the same lines as you would set up a league with some additional options that I'll get to in a second. So if you are pricing your league and you want to charge one price for the entire season, then you would set your pricing model to be on league registration. Now, if I was going to charge based on every day that player opted in, so if you wanted to make this like a $5 charge every time they opted in week to week, so it's a pay as you play model, then we support that model as well. But if you do want your money up front, then I suggest that you do the by league registration model and then set this price to whatever you want it. For now, I'm just going to make this a free league so we don't get any impediments around pricing. Okay. The ranking algorithm is what I mentioned earlier, where we support 2. So I will briefly describe the differences. The points 1 percentage is very popular. It's what a lot of people are running right now. It's really a percentage of your points 1 divided by your overall points played. And this is cumulative, so it doesn't reset every week. So that's a pro and a con. Some players like it, and the players that have a bad week are the ones that are quickly going to tell you they don't like it, because what happens is if somebody comes in and only wins like 30% of their points, then they have a tough road to climb, because it's a cumulative point by points 1 as the league progresses. So the 1 up, 1 down is an interesting concept, because that's only based on that week. So if you do 1 up, 1 down, then your top player on a court is going to move up in ranking, and your bottom player on a court would move down in ranking, and all the players in the middle stay within the ranking they're at based on how they did. Now, you can still move within a court on 1 up, 1 down. So if you're playing a 5-player court and players 2, 3, and 4, if they have if player 4 is number 2 that week, then he would jump and go to number 2, but they would still stay within that same group of players.
Hey,
Hope
Tim,
I explained that well, but yes.
can you make the screen a little bit bigger?
I can. How's that?
That's bigger. Yep. Great.
Awesome. So that's the ranking algorithm. So for this one, I'm just going to do a points 1 percentage. The next option is your registered players. This option is really for how many players you want to actually allow to register. Now, as I mentioned, if you were on the webinar last week, I've ran multiple leagues over the last 8 to 10 months, and I usually average about an 80% opt-in rate. So what I don't do is I don't make these two settings the same. I always overfill on the registration side, and then you want to set your sessions per game day based on the amount of courts that you're going to have. So if I have 4 courts and I know that I can only support 5-man rotations, then I'm going to set that to 20. So more than 20, I can't get on a court and somebody would get left out. So I'm only letting the top 20 that opt in get in for that game day. Okay. Enable max movement. This is going to be for those organizations that want to try to put mixed skilled level players in the same ladder. This is going to prevent those major movements up and down the ladder up to a fixed number of spots. So if I would set this to 4, then even if I have a good week or a very bad week, I'm only going to be able to move up 4 spots or down 4 spots week to week, depending on how I play. Okay. So this is to prevent very early on, somebody doing really well on court 5 and jumping all the way to court 1. Now, I will say if you are running a 4-5 league and everybody within that league is pretty like skilled, then absolutely guys love it to and the ladies too, they love to try to battle it out, and you can take the max movement off and just let players go where they lie based on their play. So you can just take max movements completely off, and that would allow the players to strictly be ranked by percentage and not have that max movement tied to it. Okay. So allow wait lists works the same way as events. So if you want to allow registration and then allow people as during your registration period to sign up for the wait list, then obviously that works the same way events does. So you would just enable that option. So the 4 or 5 player rotation. So if you want only 4 player rotations, you certainly can do that. If you do want to allow both the 4 and 5, which is what I'm going to recommend because it allows you to get more players, more revenue, and just get more people excited about playing in it. We do support any number of those options or combinations. So you can run both, or you can run one of either. And then once you've designated the rotation, then you set the type. So you basically tell the system, hey, I want you to generate 2 rotations of matches and everybody plays to 11. So what I mean by 2 rotations is that you would play with each of the other partners twice, and you would play each game to 11. And so it's no win by 2 in this league because we want the same number of points for all the 4-man rotations to be the same. So it's 66 points in this model. So it would be a straight, how many points did I win divided by 66 to get your percentage. Now this format here, this is an interesting concept that and I did this because I wanted to make it easy if you printed out score sheets. People always say, oh, do we play with the same person twice, or do we play with each person and then do it all over again? Well, you get to set that up and choose. So if you do, my guys prefer to stick with their partner, switch sides, and then play another game with the same partner and then switch partners. So if you like that format, you would want to use back-to-back. If you did want to alternate partner every game and then go through it all again, then you would alternate partner as your option. So I'm going to go ahead and set the 4-person rotation type here to 2 rotations to 11, and then the 5-person to 1 rotation to 15. Now the 5-man rotational preference means if I have, say, 13 players, and that's what I'm going to show here in the demo, then you know that you can't fit 13 players equally on 3 courts. So what's going to happen is the system needs to know where to backfill the 5-man court. So if you set it to the bottom, then you would have court 1 with 4, court 2 with 4, and court 3 with 5. If you set it to the top, you would have court 1 with 5, court 2 with 4, and court 3 with 4. Okay. So I always give a little reward to the top teams and always backfill at the bottom because people prefer to play a 4-man or 4-lady rotation. So that's why I usually, as best practice, would recommend a bottom here. Now, the next option is really good for when you're setting up your leagues and you don't want people to have access. You don't want people to register. You basically just want it hidden while you're setting it up. This is what's going to control visibility. So this way you can control whether or not the players see it on the app. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and check it. Now, inactive players, there's a concept in the league where if a player gets hurt, you can set them to go inactive. And basically what this is going to do is decide whether you want to show those players at the bottom or in the standings, or if you just want to hide them completely. So if you just want to hide them completely, you would just uncheck that and then they wouldn't be seen. Okay. Now, again, as Ashley mentioned, I know this is a lot of settings I'm covering. I'm going to have written documentation, and you'll also have this video to reflect back on if some of this stuff is, confusing, or you need to go back and rehash it. Allow players to withdraw or go inactive. That's if you want players to be able to pull themselves out. I don't do this. If a player needs to come out, I like them to tell me. But if you want to allow that, then you would turn this option on. And then if you want the players while they're out on the courts to be able to report the score, which I highly recommend, it takes a lot of legwork off you as a league coordinator. You'll be able to allow players to report scores. The only caveat to that is players, and it's a good one, players will only be able to report and edit scores for their court only. So they'll be able to see all the other scores. So if they pull out their phone on a game day during a break and want to look at the scores, they certainly can, but they wouldn't be able to change any of the scores for the other courts, only their own. Okay. And then if you're charging and you want to add taxes to your league registration, this is where you're going to assign your tax rate. The one thing that we don't have here that I've already marked and we will get in is being able to assign a revenue category to your league revenue so that you can basically map your league revenue to a specific league category. We don't have that in here right now. We realize we missed it and we are going to be adding it. Okay.
Quick question, Tim. On the pricing, sometimes I have players who just play once or twice and they need to pay for those individual days. But then I also have some players that sign up for the entire 8 weeks. Is there an option to have both?
Not at this time. So what you would probably do is just you could just post a fee. I guess you would have to just post a fee. That's good feedback. Kim, if you could just take notes for some of these questions, that would be great. So I could get them back to development. But right now we don't support that hybrid model. We do make you choose whether you want to do the full price or you want to do the opt-in, because most of the time, if we do have somebody that's subbing in, what I do and what a lot of clubs do is just let the subs play for free because they are just a sub. But again, in Flex, you don't really have to have subs because the league still works if somebody can't play that week. But great call out, great question. All right, so let's talk about setting up the league. Again, pricing is just like an event. I covered that earlier. All this is going to feel like an event. So if you guys are all CourtReserve customers, so this is very familiar to you. Nothing changed here. You can specify leagues and your league pricing at the membership type level. So for your non-members, you obviously can charge a bigger price than your regular members. Your premium memberships can, play for free if you want. And then you can even cut off the ability for non-members to get in if you want to run a member-only league. So nothing changed in regards to how you set up a league as far as those options compared to events. Same here with the registration start and ends, works the same way. The 3 things that we did add is the ability to opt in or the opt-in timeframes for opting into each week. So where I have mindset and it seems to work well is 7 days or 1 week prior to a game day, players will be able to load up their app and quickly opt in or out of a particular league. And so that just lets the league coordinator and lets the other players know who's planning on playing for that particular league night. And then the opt-in closes just so coordinators know, or if you need to shift courts around, if you don't get a whole lot of players, then you'll be able to set this, but it's generally best practice to set this not too far out before you start. But if you do want to sell that court time or add it to an open play that's running concurrently with your league, you obviously can set this to 8 hours if you want and just really tell your players, hey, if you want to play, you get 7 days, don't try to do it last minute. Now, once this opt-in time closes, it closes for the players, but you as an administrator or league coordinator will obviously be able to override opt-in statuses at any time. It never fails to happen. Every time I have a league night, we're all on the court warming up, and I have a player that gets caught up at work or gets sick and can't come. So I'm on the court. I just pull out my app, opt them out, regenerate the matches, and we're off and running. So this opt-in time is only relevant for players, not administrators. And then if you want to show your standings, which obviously I'm thinking all of you will, you want to show your standings publicly, you have to check this box. If you don't, then only the standings will be shown to you, which does nobody really any good, but we still wanted to make that a configuration option if you wanted. Okay. So that is set up. As far as rules, we did give you a section and an editor so that you can come in and set up all your rules in a nice formatted way so players can read the actual rules of the league or ladder that you're presenting to them. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and this would be a good time, Ashley, if we had any around this area that I'll go ahead and take so I don't have to come back to this section.
Absolutely. Can we automatically opt everyone in?
I mean, by default, everybody's opted out, and I would not recommending opting everybody in. I would give some onus on them and make sure that they take it literally takes 5 seconds to open up the app, and you're going to see this in a second. the opt-in button is right there on their dashboard. So all they have to do is just open the CourtReserve app and click opt-in. It takes 5 seconds. So because here's what's going to happen if you obviously can go into the section and opt everybody in, but as soon as you do that, then you're going to be in a scenario where you're opting out the players that didn't show up, and it's much less overhead just to put the responsibility to the players to give them 7 days to do it and just make them do it.
Okay. We don't have courts assigned to our organization in CourtReserve. Will we need to add courts to use the league platform?
No, it'll still just allow, it's a good question. They don't have to. Yeah, I got it. You have to.
I mean, we will have a way to make that work.
Okay. Yeah. So my colleague behind me said, right now, yes, you do, but we will have a way to not put that requirement on that very soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Where are the rules presented to the player on their device?
That's a good question. I don't want to tell you wrong, so let me just note who asked that, and I will respond when I send the beta email. I'll make sure I get to that person and answer that question. I believe
amazing,
it's right.
yeah, amazing, Dave. We'll get back to you on that one.
Yeah.
How do we intelligently schedule court time for a league game day, or how long does the league event run on average?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. So if you do the model that I'm showing here, okay. If you do the model here and you don't go above a 4 or 5 person rotation, if you don't get into the 6 and 7 people rotations, which are highly, that's a lot of sitting for players. This can all run within 2 hours. So we always start at 5:30, and the last court is always finishing between 7:15 and 7:30. We have rarely ran over that 2-hour mark. Now, with that being said, we start promptly at 5:30. And we give 1 timeout per match as a 30-second maximum just to stop momentum. And we try to limit the changeovers to at least a minute and a half. And if you follow that guideline, then you can easily get this in with 2 hours. So I would recommend you do a 2-hour window for a league with this setup, and you'll be perfectly fine. Now, again, it goes back to that time-based model that we're going to be putting in. So we are going to be putting in an option where you're going to be able to say, hey, I want to run, instead of it going to 2 rotations to 11, it'll be 2 rotations for 15 minutes. So it'll be a 2 rotation per X time. So then if you really want to make sure that each player gets the same amount of time on the court, and you are very in a time crunch and you want to, for example, run 90-minute leagues, then you'll have that option in the near future.
Last question, when duper is enabled, what happens if the player's duper moves up or down with an event that's outside of the org, and now it affects my rating inside the league platform? Nothing will automatically withdraw them right now. So they would just not be able to participate in the next session if they carried that same, but we don't want to, that's going to happen. You don't necessarily want to penalize a player. Now, I get promotion, relegation, and all that, and we're going to be thinking about how to do that, but I would never penalize a player until we get that in. Now, obviously, what you would probably want to do, and what we're going to build, is the ability to auto promote them to a higher league. If you have a higher league running that will then match their new duper rating, automatically promote them and put them at the bottom of the more advanced players. Same at the bottom. If a player is getting crushed and they got a 20% winning percentage, at some point we want to be able to set a threshold to relegate that person down and put them at the top of the lower division. So we're already thinking through that, but right now you would have to handle that manually if you did want to move them out and into another league. Great, that's all. Awesome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this, and then we'll talk about scheduling. So now that the league is created and the session's created, now we got to tell the system, hey, when are we playing the league? So this is the concept of schedules. So the first thing I'm going to do is just click the green schedule button here. And this is going to allow me, just like you would an event, to say, hey, when are you going to play this? Okay. So for this one, we're going to run this league. We're going to go it on Saturday mornings, and we're going to do a 2-hour window. Let's just pick 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Same as events, same recurring rules. Nothing is going to look out of the ordinary here. You guys are all used to doing this. So we're going to run this Saturday, and let's just run it for 8 weeks. Okay.
You obviously can end it by date. Now, even though I generate an 8-week schedule, you can add dates to the end. You're going to run into cancellations due to rain if you're an outdoor club. Nothing is going to prohibit you from moving around dates or adding dates if you want to. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is say, hey, throw this on all 4 pickleball courts, and then go ahead and create this schedule. And now that I have my schedule created, it's going to throw me and show me, here's all of the, so now I'm in the session. Okay. So if I go back here to sessions, you're going to see right here, here is my advanced co-ed session. And if I go to view, I get to the same page that I landed on. So now when you're actually working a particular session from an administrator perspective, now you're in this flow where here's your session, all the settings that I just changed. Here is my game day schedule. And the neat thing about what we did here is if you are running 2 different schedules for the same session, we can support that now. You can't support this model in events. It's coming, but right now you have to set up 2 separate events in CourtReserve if you change the time. Well, within the league platform, since this was brand new, we didn't want to put that prohibitor in. So I could actually create a new schedule here if I wanted to and run another date, say Wednesday night from 6 to 8 p.m. So then I'm running a Saturday schedule and a Wednesday night schedule within the same league session. Okay. So that's for those clubs that want to give leagues a twice a day run. You absolutely can support that model within this platform. Now, again, if you want to, if you want to reschedule the day, you cancel the day, it works the same as events. And then obviously you can add, if you cancel an event and you want to add a new one to take its place so that everybody gets their 8 days of money's worth, you can simply just add a new game day and tack it on at the end. Okay. Or you can just reschedule it as you could an event date and tack it on at the end. Either way works the same. Okay. So now that we talked about creating a league, creating a session, creating a schedule, now it's all about registration, right? So I'm going to simulate registration. So I'm going to come in here. Here's your players tab. This is where you're going to be on the admin side. Now, obviously, players will be able to see the league list. The leagues will be in its own list on the member portal. So there will be a new tab at the top right beside events. Leagues are not in with events. They're separated. So you'll have, if you enable leagues and you have an active leagues, then a new tab will pop up on the admin or the member portal up in the top nav. And then also on the mobile app in their dashboard, right under events, you'll be able to see the word leagues. And that's where they'll go to see the leagues and register for the leagues. For this example, I'm just going to mimic registration and register 15 or 16 players to simulate so I can show you the rest of the demo. So if you're going to do this manually, no different than what you're doing now with registering. So I'm going to just throw in a couple players here. Sorry, I really wanted to show you all this, so that's why I'm taking the time. So just give me a minute to enter all these great tennis players here. Let me go over here and enter some better names. Here we go. Let's see. Couple more. And we really improved this process. Is for speed. I want you to watch how fast this is. So right now in events, it's not, when you register this amount of players, there is a little bit of a delay, but we've optimized this so that now when you register, it's instant. So now we just registered all those players. And obviously if the league was at a cost, it would have went ahead and posted that fee, whatever it was, to all these accounts. Okay. So now we have 17 players playing in this league. You can see here, it puts the initial standings based on the registration order. So let's talk about ranking players initially, right? So as soon as you get your players registered and now it's time to set the initial order, there's 3 distinct options right here under ranked players. I'll come back to manual. You can seed randomly. So if you want to just say, hey, we're going to randomly seed everybody, you click the button and then boom, everybody's seated. And it's just random order, okay? If you want to do it by duper rating or your pickleball rating, you would just say seed by rating, and then everybody's rating that you have chosen for this league, everybody would be ranked with the rating that they have on their profile, okay? And then if you want to manually rank, you just click manual, and then you can move these however you want. Put Tim at the top. And then you can just keep moving these around until you get your order the way you want it. And then you just save. Okay. So you choose however you want. If you're running an existing league, goes back to that earlier question for somebody that's starting this weekend. So what you would want to do is once you created your league, go in to manually rank and put them in the same order that they played in for this weekend. And then you'll be set to go for the remaining weeks. Any questions on that, Ashley?
Oh, let's see. Well, we've got a couple questions. They're kind of long. I think we should keep going and then we'll get to these.
Okay. So now that we have all the players and we have all of the, we're ready to start our game day. Let me show you how let me simulate us playing this first week. So if I view the players, once I'm in a game day, you're going to see, once I click, let me go back. I covered that a little quickly. So now you see I'm in my session. And if I want to work or coordinate or manage the upcoming game day, I'm going to click this view button right here on the week that I want to manage. So once I do that, I'm going to go into a new section that's going to show me all of the players and their opt-in status. So you can see by default, each week, everybody's out. Okay. Now, as players opt in, the button will turn green. Okay, so if I was to hop in over onto the mobile side and I refresh this, I'm going to see here's the league that I just entered. And so again, it's on the dashboard, right? So once it's on the dashboard and the opt-in's open, all they have to do is just click opt-in and they're in. So if I go back over here to my league now and I refresh, Tim's in. So that's how easy and simple it is on the player side. And if they want to opt out, then all they have to do is click opt out and it just opts them out. So now if I refresh, you'll see that Tim is out. So they can do that during that 7-day period or 7-day window that you've given them. Okay. So I'm going to just simulate, let's see, 13 players. So it's going to show you how many, if you just look up at the top, it'll show you how many players have opted in. So we're just going to go through here and opt in up to 13. Okay, so now 13 players are in. You're ready to start the day. Okay, you're there, you're at the courts. So let's go through what that process will look like. So now that the league coordinator's out there or the front desk person, whoever's doing or coordinating this league, there's a couple steps you have to walk through to get the groups created and get the matches out on the court. Okay, so the first thing is to lock the opt-ins. Now, what we do is based on that time frame, if I've got it set to 2 hours before the game day and my game day starts at 7 p.m. at 5 p.m. the players can no longer opt in, but you can still opt in and out as long as you want until you click this lock opt-in button. So if I click this lock in button, that basically says, hey, we're starting. We got the players, they're locked in. So now that the players are started, we now need to create the groups, and the groups are the courts, right? So if I click create groups, now it's going to take those 13 players based on our rules, based on the ratings, and allocate them to the correct court and correct rotational schedule. So you can see I got my top 4 players, and it's all based on ranking, right? So you can see the number 8 player is not here. So the number 10 got elevated to court 2 because the number 8 was not here. So it's always going to allocate from bottom to top and then put your 5 player courts that it has to create at the bottom because that's where I told the system to put them. Okay. So now we have our groups. So now we have to create or start the game day. And when we start the game day, that's what actually creates the matches and allows for score entry. Okay. So as an administrator, I can come in here and I can see all the scores. All right. And I'll show you in a minute how to, because I'm going to edit all these scores and put them in a second so we can finalize the game day. But as an administrator, you have full, you can come in here, hit edit scores, and then go on your way. But again, you want your players to do this to take this off of you. So if I was to jump back into the mobile app and I was to click on this league, if you click on the left side, the league, it's going to take me in and it's going to take me right to the game day. Okay. Now, and we're going to fix this so it goes right to my matches. If you look, this is our new design of our mobile app. And so you can see it's going to default me to be the game day that's current. Now, as a player, I can scroll up and I can see all the players that are playing. So I have 13 that have opted in. So I know that there's 13 guys that are playing, or 13 ladies that are playing with us. And I can see 4 players didn't opt in. Now, if I click on my matches, that's going to take me to my court and my match, right? So the only thing that we need to add here, well, we do have it here. We did add it, but it's not on every card. But at the very top, we'll tell them which court to report to and what their rotational type looks like. So if a player says, hey, am I playing 1 game to 15 or am I playing to 11? My matches will tell them court and how many rotations to play. And plus, they can just look at the scorecards and see where they're supposed to play and who they're supposed to play with and who they're supposed to play against. And then it's all about easy entry. So if me and Bobby here, if we play our match, we click enter score, the little drawer will pop up. We enter our score right on our phones, submit results, get back on the court, play the next match. Okay. Super easy interface to enter scores. Now, if I go over to all matches, I can see all the matches here, but look what happens. As soon as I get off my court, I don't see an enter score button. So I cannot enter scores for other matches. Now I can also, until the coordinator has finalized the game day, if Andy comes up and says, hey, we actually scored 5 that match, I can simply just go back in and change the score. So I can simply come back in here and change this to, well, it doesn't seem to be working in this emulator. So let me see if I can do it from my matches. If I click edit score here. Nope. So we'll have to look at that. So it's fine. So normally you can edit scores there. It's just probably the emulator's not letting me enter them right there. So you can change the score up anytime you want, and until they're finalized. What I normally do is have somebody enter the scores and have somebody else verifying scores. So they're just looking either over their shoulder or they're pulling out their own phone, making sure somebody from the other team's making sure the score is correct. Okay. I saw some questions popping up. Ashley, do you want me to stop here and answer any? Because we're almost done.
Okay, here we go. So can you change the order of people assigned to a court? For example, CourtReserve assigns a player the number 1 spot, meaning they play the first 4 games and sit the 5th. Some people want to break in between and prefer to play 2, break, and then play the last 2.
Yeah, I mean, just because the system has it lined up a certain way, your players can work out whatever rotation is best for them. As long as they play all the games and that the system is telling them to play, we give them an order they can play them in. But if you guys have some type of concept where you want to break that order and play them in a different order to give somebody a break, then absolutely do that. Now, there is no breaks in 4-man rotations because everybody's on the court. Now, in the 5-man rotation, it's going to tell you who has the bye. So in a 5-man rotation, somebody has to sit. So that's the only thing that I can recommend in that scenario, because if you're in a 4-court rotation, there is no breaks.
So can we limit the number of times a person can opt in? So we don't want people to have opt-in every week. We want to limit them to the number of opt-ins they can have over a number of weeks. Not
a current option. And personally, that's not if people are paying for the league, they're going to be, I guess that's a capacity issue, and I get it. So Kim, just mark that as a feedback item that we can discuss. Currently, the answer is no, that's not a feature that we provide at this time.
Can you create matches from the mobile app?
You can do all of this from the mobile app on the admin side. That whole process that I walked through, creating the groups, locking all of that is easily done on the admin mobile app.
Can the league sessions be variable size for opt-ins, meaning one session series is for 4 players, another for 8 or for 12, or other for 16 or 20? We would modify the size based on demand and court availability.
Absolutely. It's all that max registrant is not at the league level, it's at the session level. So if you want to run a session, your first session, and say you did 25, but only 14 show up, then the next session you can change the max registrants to 16.
Can I add my club logo to the score sheet?
Not right now, but that is that logo, I guess, right there at the score sheet, it does hide the header. So we can obviously, yeah, this is great feedback, guys. Anything you have, we're willing to hear. So just write that one down as well.
Can a player print out the assignments ahead of time so they don't have to carry their phone on the court with them?
Great question. We do have a print option. You can see it here. So this will print out the scorecards, but currently this is not available on the player side. And the reason is that, like I said, that 9 times out of 10, there is a person that doesn't show up, or people that don't show up, or a person shows up and didn't opt in. So when I was printing these cards, before I had the ability to actually allow the players to enter them in the mobile app, this was a major headache because I'd have to go back, or I was already at the courts and couldn't print them. So you can certainly do that from the administrator side, but it's not available on the player side at this time.
Last question. Do 4-player and 5-player courts play the same number of games?
They can't. They play this, they can't because of the rotation. So a 5-player court, that's why on the 5-player court, you go to 15, and on the 4-player court, you go to 11. So that is the closest permutation to getting this to as close as possible. So with the 4-player court, your total points will be 66 points. So you'll play, you got the opportunity to win 66 points. In a 5-player rotation, you have the opportunity to win 60 points because the games go to 15, not 11. So that's as closest as we could get them. And it also, from a time perspective, equals out.
All right, let's rock.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and finish out the score entry so I can go ahead and show you finalization. So I'm just going to go in here and enter all the scores here. Let's see, make that a close game, make this a blowout. Oh, see, that was a good test. So basically, it will not let you put in a bad score. All right. And then obviously it knows when you're playing the 15, so it'll make you, it's intelligent enough to know where the scoring is going to, like how much. And last 15. Okay, and this updates in real time. So basically, if I was to go here and refresh the mobile app, then all the scores obviously are going to be here under all matches, and they can you say. So as the game day is progressing, they'll be able to scroll and see how everybody, or somebody's at home and couldn't play. I do that all the time. If I can't make it or I'm out of town, I'll check it out in real time and see how the scores are going. So now that all the scores are entered, now obviously if somebody messes up, you can come in here and edit a score at any time. Edit just one score and click save, and that'll change the score. So now that the game day is finished, right, it has to go through a finalization process, and that has to be done by a league coordinator. Right now, because I know this question is going to get asked, this managing leagues is not a sub-admin or player permission at this time. What we're working on is the ability to add a league manager as a sub-admin permission, but we also are going to take it a step above and allow you to elevate a player for a given week to coordinate. So that way, if the league coordinator can't make it to do the opt-in and opt-outs for the no-shows, a player can do that. So that is coming. But right now, you have to have admin access to get to this part of the league platform on the admin side. Okay. So now what that person would have to do is, once all scores are in and everybody feels good about it, they simply finish the game day. And what this does, finalizes, processes all the rankings, and boom, updates your standings. Okay. So now this is all your standings. Now, what I wanted to show you here is that, remember, I put in that max 4 movement. So as you can see, that's gone into effect once we get to Toby. So here, Mr. Marino, he is above everybody, but he started at number 10. So he is only able to go to 6. Okay. And Andy here didn't play or didn't win any games. He played, but didn't win. No, he didn't play. So he dropped down. So if you're inactive, you can't go up, but you can move down. Okay. So if people jump you based on percentage and you didn't play, then you will get jumped. Okay. And then Rafa here, he had a 53 And he did not move. He moved as far down as he could go, -4. And that's why Alfano here couldn't jump over him, because Alfano couldn't get more. He's only up to 3. So it's the max movement really restricts that up and down. Now, if you had that turned off, then right here, Mr. Alfano would have been sitting at the very top of the ladder. So he would have moved all the way down off that bottom court, all the way to number 1. So that's where you got to really look at your demographic of players and the skill level to determine which algorithm and if that match movement is going to make sense for you. Okay. Now the standings here, this is what the percentage is based on. So it's the division of points won divided by points played. It will show you your total games. It's going to show you your total game wins, your total game losses, your game win percentage, which has no bearing on ranking, and then your performance over your last 6 games. Okay. Now, the question is, oh my word, Bobby here, we messed this up. So they came to you, hey, Andy and Brian actually won 11-4. And you're like, oh no, this is going to mess up. We got you covered. So in this scenario, we have a reversion process in place. So if you need to correct the score for a week that has been finalized, you simply have to revert it. Guess what that's going to do? That's going to set everything back to the way it was for from the previous week. So we hadn't started, so that revert has just reverted everything, but it didn't revert the matches. So now I can simply go in here, edit the score, change Tim and Bobby to 4, and change Andy and Mike, and save it, and then finish the game day. So now I've recorrected the entire week in a matter of about 15 seconds. Okay. So any questions on scoring, score entry, or standings? Awesome. Last thing
Tim. I was reading through some of the questions. If you run out of time, can you enter a score of less than 15? So the final score ends up being like 8-6, for example.
Not right now. That is, you can mark a match incomplete, but it will not count if you do that. So during that scoring entry, there was a checkbox there that you can choose to say, hey, I want to mark this incomplete. So the way that way, if you do want to, and I'm glad, that's a great question. So like, for example, if a storm brews and you're on the last game you don't want to penalize everybody if they got 5 of their 6 games in, right? So you would go 8-6 and mark incomplete. Nick, does it count the score of an incomplete match at all? Or okay, it doesn't count that match at all. So right now, maybe that's a feedback item. I'd love to get your feedback on. So we maybe could put an option to say, hey, if a game is incomplete, still count it towards the total points won and lost. But right now, it would just throw that match out as if it didn't exist and only count the 5 scores that it did have.
And so would you do the same kind of thing if somebody got injured then?
Correct. Same kind of thing. So in the injury situation, everybody on that court, after the injury, all those matches would have to go in as incomplete.
All right. And can you penalize a ranking for not playing? Dormant players sit at the top. Can a dormant player sit at the top without playing?
Yeah, we don't have the penalty points in it, do we? Nope. We are working. We had that in phase 1 and we took it out. So what we did, because of the complexity it was introducing, but what we want to do is get it back in. And so what the question was to say, hey, if a player doesn't play, can you move them or penalize them a certain percentage points? And so we're still working through how we want that to work. But currently right now, they would sit. Now, if they don't play, naturally, they just keep dropping, because the other is, unless, here's the scenario where they wouldn't. If they established a very high percentage and then just didn't play, they stay there until you manually either move them down or make them inactive. And so that happened to me. I had a player that played in a bunch of tournaments, and he was one of our best players, and he had a span of like 5 weeks in a row where he was in tournament play. So I just made him inactive and then put him manually back when he came back to where, a couple spots down than where he was when he left.
And then another question, can finalized scores be edited for any week rather than just the previous week?
No, because the reversion process will only go back 1 week. It's too complicated because the thing about it, if you noticed an error in week 2 and you're in week 7, that would have to walk through 6 weeks of reversions and then 6 more weeks. And it was just too much. I had not ran into that problem. So you just got to be very careful. But right now you can only revert back 1 week.
1 week at a time.
1 week at a time. Yeah.
All right. And then 2 questions surrounding payments or having people sign up. If we're having people sign up for all sessions and pay, how do you allow people to sign up as subs and not have to pay for all the sessions?
Right now, that would have to just be an override. So right now, somebody asked that last week too. You would have to just put them in and register them and just override their price to 0. They won't be able to do it on the registration themselves.
All right. And then last question, are we planning on having any educational videos for players on how to use the system?
Yeah, I'm not going to probably do a video. Maybe we will. I shouldn't say that. But the quickest thing that I can get is get you a very good written document, because this is going to be pretty much the same flow for every club. This is not very, in terms of customization, the opting in, the entering of the scores, the viewing of the matches, and the viewing of the players that are playing are really the same across our entire portfolio of clubs. So I'm going to do screenshots and do call outs and get you that information early next week.
Okay, well, that's all we had as far as questions go.
Awesome. And I did forget one thing I wanted to show you before I let you go. And it's a great way to wrap up. We got 3 minutes to go. All of this does exist on your schedulers. So anytime that you want to view and see the leagues on your court sheets, obviously they will be there. This we probably will change because this could be somewhat misleading. This is not the number of registrants. It's the number of people that are registered for that game day. It's the opt-in players. So when you see 13 here, you notice I have 20 plus in my league, but I have 13 playing on this Saturday. So if I was to jump over to next Saturday, obviously that's going to say 0 because nobody's opted in. So we're still figuring out the best thing to call it, like, 13 opt-ins or whatever. But right now that hasn't been changed. So I didn't want anybody to get confused thinking they registered players. They go look at the scheduler and they're like, the registrants are not showing up, but that's because they're not opted in. So if I go back here, back to June 24th, and I click on this, then you're going to see these are the player status. And if this opt-in was not locked, you can even opt in players from this screen as well. And then you can also see all your groups, all your matches, do everything. You can't edit scores from this pop-up. You have to go in the league, but everything else you can do right from the scheduler. And with that, that is leagues. So I hope you like this. I hope this was informative. I hope this will help you get started next week. Again, we'll have try to have a video to you. We'll have this one for sure up on our somewhere where we can allow you to access it. And then we will write a written user guide that will walk you through some of the things I showed you today. Thanks, everybody.